Welcome back to the next episode of the Ecom Growth Show. I'm your host, Dayton Coleman, and with me, I've got Stan, who is a lawyer, and we're going to talk about all the problems that Amazon's, not all the problems, but some of the problems that Amazon sellers get themselves into and have trouble getting themselves out of. And that is exactly what Stan specializes in. So, Stan, would you please do a quick introduction as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a patent attorney. My background is in electrical engineering, and my firm does everything from helping inventors get patents and protecting their products to helping them enforce their rights. Um, and we've got a bit of a niche practice where we help folks enforce their rights against online sellers.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about every single one of those. And Stan, I'm going to go pretty rapid fire on here. I'm trying to do a better job of keeping my podcast to less than an hour. I have a tendency to ramble on a little bit, so I'm going to try and causatively stop myself from doing that. So I'm going to dive straight into the first question if you are ready.
I'm ready.
All right, cool. Let's do it. So, do I need to get a patent? This is making the assumption that I have invented a product, right? Do I need to get a patent? This is a multi-part question. What's the difference between a utility patent and a design patent? And can I just do patent pending? And does that protect me? So let's start off with, do I need to get a patent?
You don't need to get a patent, okay? But a patent helps you protect your product, and it gives you the right to exclude others from making, selling, using, or offering the similar product for sale. Okay? A patent is sort of there are two or three components to it. There's sort of a written description, there's some drawings, and then the big part is the patent claims. The claims are like the deed to a piece of property. Now, your property goes from the old 10 paces from the old oak tree to, whatever. And the patent claim talks about what your invention is, and it gives you the right to exclude others from trespassing on the property that's set forth in the patent claim. So you want to uh, set yourself up so people can't copy your product and sell the same product. Yes, you want to get a patent. But do you need to get a patent? No, but you're opening yourself up to competition. And the important thing to realize about patents is they're time sensitive. Most countries require that a patent application be on file before the product or the invention is publicly disclosed. The,
Oh,
the United States gives inventors a 1-year grace period from public disclosure, but other countries do not. And patent protection is by territory, as all IP is. So if you get a United States patent, that doesn't protect you in another country. You have to get a patent in each country or region that you want protection in.
and so I assume there's no such thing as a worldly patent, huh?
No, there's no such thing as a worldly patent. There's something that would be a worldly patent application. So you can file the patent application and preserve your rights in most countries, and you'll get a search, which will help you decide if you want to spend the money to go into the other countries. There is something called a European patent. So for the folks that are in the European Patent Convention, the European Union is 27 countries, and then the UK's in it and some others. You you can get one patent that will cover everybody in the European Patent Convention.
Okay, that's interesting. All right.
Okay?
So that would make sense if I'm a seller. I go, hey, I'm going to expand into Europe, which is the most logical, usually the most logical place for sellers in the U.S. to expand to. Then they would only have to go through one additional patent uh, uh, application for that.
Correct. And
Okay.
the thing about patents is, like I said, they're time sensitive and the costs are also sort of front loaded because if you want to go into Europe, you need to file and your first application before there's any public disclosure. And then you've got 1 year from the filing date of your first application to file in other countries and claim priority back to your first application.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so
all right.
that's a little different than some of the other IPs, but with a patent, if you don't meet your deadlines, you've lost it.
And can you regain it?
No,
Aha.
it's gone.
Huh.
So, the
Interesting.
United States is a capitalistic economy. And in the absence of some sort of intellectual property protection, somebody is free to, make the
Use it.
same product.
And so, okay, if I submit for a patent, does that qualify me for patent pending at that point?
Yes, it does.
And so I
And
have a year in the US as well?
well, no, once you've submitted your patent, okay, it goes through an examination process. But you have no rights until the patent actually issues. So in the US, you file your application, it sits there. It's generally about 18 months or so before the patent office picks it up and issues the first office action. Right?
Yikes.
And then you start the dance. So you're probably not going to get a patent issued um, for 2 to 3 years after you file. Now you can accelerate that. We're dealing with the government here. So if you pay them some additional money at the time you file, you can, their goal is to get you the final office action no later than 12 months after you file.
Got it. Grease palms.
Well,
Okay.
pay additional filing fee. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, of course. It's completely legitimately greasing palms. I get it. There's a form for greasing the palms. All right, cool.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
So
Go ahead.
it's time sensitive and it also takes some time. All right. So you got to plan ahead. You can't say, oh, gee, somebody's starting to make my product and compete with me. Maybe now I should file a patent.
Mm,
Right. So patents are pretty strong because they protect the entire product.
okay. And
But
what's keeping on the patent conversation here? What's the difference between a utility patent and a design patent?
okay, now when I'm talking about the timing and everything, that's for a utility patent. The utility patent protects the structure of the product itself. Okay, and the function that the product performs, where a design patent protects the ornamental design. Right.
So would
So
I need both?
yeah, perhaps. Right. The more
Mm,
protection, the better. A design patent you can generally get in under a year. And some examples of perhaps where you have both might be a watch. If you've got a particular, ornamental design to the watch, you can maybe able to get a design patent. And if you've done something in the watch that's unique and
hmm.
different,
Then
you
utility.
can get the utility patent.
Okay. All right, cool. I think, just one last question. I asked earlier, and I now I'm not so sure I understood, but during this process, when I have submitted my documentation and I do not yet have a patent, at the point that I've submitted my documentation, it is now patent pending, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
And
you
but
and
I'm
all you're doing with when you say patent pending is putting the world on notice that you have a pending patent application.
yep.
You
Yep.
have no rights until your patent issues.
So I could knock off the product until the patent issues, and then they'd have to file a claim against me and say, hey, you need to stop selling this.
Correct.
So I've seen products at Home Depot then I'm like, hey, that's a cool product. I pick it up, patent pending. Something and then they usually give the patent number, I think, or the application number or something like that. Yeah.
Well, they may, or they just may say patent pending.
I've
Typically,
seen
if
it
there's
both.
a number, they'll give an issued patent number. Because in the United States, most patent applications are kept secret until 18 months from the filing date, at which point they're public.
All right, cool. All right, next question coming right up. I don't know anything about intellectual property. As a new seller, what do I need to know?
Well, you want to make a decision early on as to whether you want your product patented. You also need to think about, if you're selecting products to sell, are you infringing somebody else's patent? Right? That's not a concern if you're the one that came up with the product. Um, so you want to, think about, do you file for your own patent? And as I said before, it's time limited. You either file an application or you lose the right to do so. Also want to think about the name for your product. Are you going to be running into problems with anybody else's name? And if not, how do you protect your name? Right? Because if to get into brand registry, Amazon requires originally an issued trademark. Now it's a pending trademark.
Yep. Yep.
But for the
Thank goodness
transparent,
for that, by the way, because it took me 14 months to get my trademark, and I did not have brand registry that whole time.
well, yeah, there are ways that people that can do things can get you some trademarks fairly quickly that will Amazon will take to get into brand registry. So
Greasing palms. Got it.
if anybody has that issue, please reach out and we'll be able to help them. But
Yeah.
you Amazon does require an issued trademark registration to participate in the transparency program.
Hmm.
So if you've got people selling on your ASIN and you want to lock that down, you need a registered trademark to do that. Now, in the US, it used to be you'd get an issued registration within 12 months after filing, but given the number of new applications the trademark office is getting, particularly from sellers based outside of the United States, it's taking significantly longer. These days, you're lucky if you get your first action from the trademark office within 12 months.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
but again, there are ways that can sort of be addressed, and you can get a trademark registration that Amazon will take to get you into the transparency program. And so, if you want to be able to use um, some of the tools that Amazon has, you do want to have a trademark, your own trademark application and your own trademark registration. And the trademarks, like the patents, are dependent upon country. The United States is the one one of the few countries where the rights to a name go to the first user. Most countries go to the first filer. So
Hmm.
if you have any interest in expanding outside the United States, you want to get a trademark application on file in your potential market to make sure that nobody overseas is looking at your product and filing their own applications to block you and sort of holding you hostage and trying to take you off of the Amazon platform in that country, or blocking your ability to get your own registration in that country.
Yeah.
Now, unlike patents, there is no time limit for filing trademark applications. So in the United States, your rights acquire through use. So, you can file before you actually start to use the product. Once you've come up with the name, you can file an intent to use trademark application. Your registration won't issue until you actually use the mark on the product, but you get a jump start on everything. right? Or you can file after you've used it. You could file, 10 years after you've used it, right? And in the US, you've got some rights to block people. Um, and there are in the United States and in other countries, trademarks are generally published for opposition, and there's services out there that will help you track what marks have been published for opposition, so you can, just take some action if somebody is trying to register your name. And we had a client that had a trademark in the United States for candles, and some Chinese sellers had tried to register the trademark for glass jars. And we
Mm.
assume what are candles sold in, right? Glass jars. So
Mm-hmm.
we assume they were doing that so they'd be able to, through brand registry, take down our client's candles.
Yeah, not I not an uncommon act. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated, but I've definitely seen stuff like that on the regular basis. So, all right. Well, that lends well into the next question, which is I know I need to get a trademark, but what do I do? How do I go about it? Obviously, I can come to you. Actually, before I have you answer, I'm going to tell you my story about how I got my trademark.
Okay.
So, I thought to myself, okay, I need brand registry, so I need a trademark. I'll do it myself. I submit, declined. I send follow-up information. It's pending. Declined. I send follow-up information. Declined. And it took me months and months and months. 14 no, is it 13? I think it was 13 months. 13 months to get my trademark because I used my name, I used Enterprises, and I used Inc. All three of those because my name is also a surname. You cannot trademark a surname, you cannot trademark Enterprises, and you cannot trademark Inc. And so I had to go through some fairly hefty hoops to get my trademark. And with all the time that I spent on uspto.gov and going through their videos, which actually some of their videos are quite helpful, I would have spent significantly less money having come to you. Significantly.
Yeah. I mean, one of the advantages of going to a lawyer is they can help you prepare the application in a way that's going to minimize objections
Mm-hmm.
from the trademark office. Our goal is to eliminate them, but it's like the TSA. Every airport you go to, they sort of apply the rules a little differently.
Yeah.
All right. But one of the things people need to realize is when you talk about a trademark, your trademark rights don't exist separate and apart from goods or services.
Okay.
All right. So you like Coca-Cola or Coke doesn't have a trademark on Coke for everything. Right? If you were to go to the USPTO and look it up, you'll see it probably there's an old registration, I'm guessing, that's for beverages. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
maybe soft drinks. And then as they started to use it on other things, like t-shirts, you get another registration that deals with t-shirts or clothing. Right? If they started using it to sponsor races, there may be another trademark registration for, entertainment services in the nature of motor races.
And
Uh,
so so that could get extraordinarily expensive. And beyond that, let's say money's not an issue. Beyond that, tedious to track all that stuff. And I so what does a company like that do? And I realize this is kind of out of the realm of most Amazon sellers because most of us just get trademarks so we can get brand registry. And that's pretty much it.
Well, that's one of the advantages of going to a lawyer. We have specialized docketing software that tracks this stuff. And what we see a lot of is trademark registrations go poof because the folks who got them themselves are not tracking the deadlines. So, for example, on the US side, between the fifth and sixth year after issuance, you have to file proof of continued use with another specimen. And
Oh,
then
shoot, I might
at
be due for that.
Okay. And then at the 10th year from issuance, you have to renew the application. And then every 10 years, you have to renew it again.
Mm.
Right?
I'm looking up my trademark now. All right, let's take a look here. Folks, we're doing it live. Where is it? Where is it? Okay, it's live. I'm still good. Phew.
Okay. When was the issue date
Let's see. Issue date is
or the registration date?
registration date. Oh, November 17th, 2020. So it's due this year.
It's due between November of 2025 and November of 2026.
Okay, so what do I need to do again? I better write this
Well,
down.
you're going to have, ideally, you need to file proof of continued use. You also have so that's what you want. That's what you want to do.
All right, so this is super important because a lot of us that were sellers, 5 years ago plus, they are going to need to do this. So I'm actually really glad you brought this up. I'm months away from having to do this myself.
Right.
So I'm literally just writing it down right now that I have to get this done. So
All
thank
right.
you, Stan.
And it sounds like you're not tracking it.
No, I'm not.
All right. And if you get trademark registrations in other countries, each country's got its own rules for the paperwork that needs to be submitted after registration.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that a lawyer comes with. They track all this stuff for you and let you focus on what you do best, your business.
Yeah. Okay. So that then brings the question up, is there a service that lawyers like yourself offer to track this stuff? Like, is it yearly or is it a one-time payment or how does that work? Or do you just offer that as a service for clients that use your services?
Yeah, we generally offer it as a service for folks that we get registrations for.
Dang it. I should have used a lawyer all those years ago. All right. Well, that's good to know. Thanks for the free legal advice on accident.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Well, good. That's I'm gonna actually do a post about this on LinkedIn because I have a feeling that nobody really knows this. I mean, I went fairly deep into trademarks in order to get mine, and it's likely that I read that, but totally forgot. So
Yeah. And what will happen is if you miss it, if you hadn't filed your documentation by the 6th-year anniversary in November 2026, about 6 months later, you'd get a notice from the trademark office canceling your registration. Right. And it's not the end of the world if it happens.
no,
Okay?
but it's probably a lot easier to just file the paperwork to show that you're continuing to use it. Yes.
Correct. Because
Yeah.
if the registration goes away, the response is filing a new trademark application and starting the process over.
No, thank you.
All right.
Yep. All right. All right. Excellent. Well, that was not something I expected to learn on this podcast. So that is fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's go on to the next question. This is now we get into the meat and potatoes of where rather than you are here to help someone start a business, now they're operating and they've got a problem. So here's the scenario. I just discovered a counterfeit product being sold on Amazon, a counterfeit of my product. What do I do?
Well, I would say give me a call.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is the important thing to know is you've got options. There are things that you can do. But I've talked to a lot of sellers who have talked to their sort of general lawyers, and they're told there's really nothing you can do. Or if you talk in the seller groups, a lot of times you'll hear, well, there's really nothing you can do. You just have to take it on the chin. Right? So if you talk to somebody that's familiar with this problem and the online selling space, there are things that can be done to help you. Now, what
Okay.
can be done depends upon what arrows you've put in your quiver to give the lawyer to use.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a registered trademark?
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you don't, it's not the end of the world. Do you have a patent?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you're not going to be able to get one, and it depends on what the folks are doing. Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple of clients of ours. This is the Neg egg peeler, and this was founded by two older women, and they lost 80% of their sales on Amazon overnight. Now, they have a trademark registration on the neg, and they also have a utility patent on the product.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
put
So they're
a little plug in here. Uh, this will let you peel a dozen hard-boiled eggs in about 2 minutes. What you
nice.
do is just put a little bit of water in here, put the hard-boiled egg in, shake it up,
Shake it.
and as shown there, the egg shell peels right off. And these women were very surprised when the product launched because their initial customers were all these really buff guys. And they made the product so they could take deviled eggs to cocktail parties.
Uh-huh.
And they couldn't figure out why
But
all
instead
these.
their audience was bodybuilders.
Right. That was totally out of what they were thinking.
Yeah.
But the bodybuilders eat hard boiled eggs for the protein. Right? So, um, the knockoff is using the neg, is also using the imagery, and the the product looks identical. Right? So we were able to clean up the Amazon marketplace and restore their sales, but they had given us some arrows to use because they had the registered trademark. They also had the patent. Now, they did not have any registered copyrights at the time, but we helped them get that as well.
So, all right, let's talk about the copyrights. I want to actually dive a little deeper into this specific scenario. When it comes to the copyrights, um, are you referring to the verbiage that's being used on the product packaging and their website and all that kind of stuff? Is that what you're referring to?
No,
Okay.
when I'm sort of referring to the imagery
Okay.
because the knockoffs typically borrow the imagery
Hmm.
from the packaging from the packaging or from the websites themselves.
Okay.
And here's a great example. This is a product called the Rapid Slicer. This is the original product. This is the knockoff product. You can see how the imagery is pretty much the same, although we're dealing with a blister pack, non-blister pack here. And on the back, the imagery on both is the same.
Yeah, I see. So for those of you that are listening in and not watching this video, there's a distinct difference in the packaging between these two products. And Stan, I noticed that the knockoff doesn't have the UPC code on it.
The UPC code's on the bottom.
Okay, so it does. So they does is it the same UPC code? They use the same one? I'm just curious here because then that would mean they'd be selling on their listing.
No, the UPC code
Hmm.
is a little different.
So then that means that they launched a completely separate product, or separate listing selling the same product. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's sneaky. So I want to go into what is what was the progression of events on this, and how long did it take? Because I asked this question because I've been shut down before on Amazon, and it took me 4 months to get my accounts back up, and it killed our sales. It literally just killed our business, right? Income down to nothing, and it took me 4 months to get it back. Well, by then it didn't matter. That money wasn't there. It wasn't going to be paying my bills, right? So in this case, how long these gals, smart ladies, had ammunition. They had a utility patent. They had a design patent. How long did it take to get this fixed with Amazon? Because those of us that are sellers know that Amazon is super helpful. I'm being
Well,
facetious,
um, the
sarcastic.
biggest lesson for the ladies out of this was Amazon is not their friend. Okay.
Surprise.
Yeah, right, right. They figured they had done everything right, and people were going to do the right thing and not use their name and not infringe on their patent, right? And the reality is, the patents and the trademarks and the copyrights give you ammunition to use to enforce your rights.
Yeah.
And
But they're not exactly a dome shield.
correct.
Mhm.
They're a shield for uh, upright citizens who
Yes.
don't want problems,
Yeah.
but for others, they're not a shield. But without them, you don't have certain rights. And one of the rights you have, and what we like to do, is go into federal court.
Hmm.
And rather than deal with Amazon and trying to get Amazon to take stuff down, we explain what's going on to a federal judge, and we get the judge to issue an order telling Amazon what to do. And
Okay.
Amazon is pretty good about that. And two of the things that we ask for are to take down these infringing listings
Yep.
and also to freeze the money in the accounts of the sellers on those infringing listings.
Yeah. So I definitely know that happens. Let me ask this: Is the brand, are these ladies entitled to reparations? Am I using that word correctly? I hope I am.
Well, they're entitled to damages.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, the legal verbiage is damages, not reparations, but it's compensation for the harm that's been caused to them.
Right. Right. Okay.
All
And so
right.
they are entitled to that. And that, does Amazon just deposit that money into their account, or does it have to go through a whole
No, no.
loop de loop?
Amazon will freeze the funds and then do with the funds what the court tells them to do.
Got it.
All
Okay.
right. So it takes a little bit of time to get the paperwork together. And, Amazon works on its own speed. But
Yeah.
once you have the court order and get it off to Amazon, it's a week or two before the listings are down.
Hmm. Okay.
All right.
So it to set realistic expectations here, it could be a month or more that this listing is still going and selling while all of this legal administration is happening in the background, huh?
Correct. But
Hmm.
the flip side of it is, the infringing accounts are continuing to sell and the money is accumulating in there.
We
Right. So
hope, yeah.
that's an example of, a client that had lost most of their business and we were able to get it back. We, got another client, Orange Screw,
Hmm.
which has a patented device. It's something that you screw into the ground and it can act as a tent stake. You can tie a dog off to it. If you're out boating and want to have a picnic, you can, put this down and tie your boat onto it. And
Hmm.
this is the knockoff.
Yep.
Right? And the knockoffs are typically sold at a substantially less cost. Um, Kirby, the guy behind this, he did not lose 80% of his business, but once the marketplace was cleaned up, he saw a substantial increase in his
Of
business.
course. Yeah, of course.
Right? So,
Yep.
he's very pleased with that.
Yep. And so
Uh,
what protections did he have in place?
well, he had a patent on the product itself, and we
Mhm.
were also able to assert an unfair competition claim because the knockoffs were using the photographs of his product and his
Mm.
advertising and delivering a product that was different from what was pictured in the advertising.
That actually reminds me, copywriting. How does one go about that? Do you need to go to a lawyer for copywriting?
A lawyer may help you,
Okay.
but a copyright is something that you have to submit to the Copyright Office. I would suggest going to a lawyer sort of for your first one to
Okay.
help you out. But you can get a copyright on a group of photos. Think up to 700 in one application. The application fee is fairly minimal, 65, $80.
Okay.
It'll take a couple of months. You can get it expedited for 800, but you can't sue
Grease
anybody for,
palms. Got it.
yeah, exactly. But you can't sue anybody in federal court unless you have a copyright registration.
Wow. Okay. So that makes sense for images. Does that apply also to videos? Like, for instance, I'm a YouTube creator.
Yep, the short answer is yes. You can get a registered copyright in your YouTube videos. Okay. And then if people use your videos and they're a bundle of rights, okay. So, whether they totally use your video, publicly display your video, use a portion of your video, or base something off of your video, you would have a claim for infringement against them. Margaret Mitchell wrote Gone with the Wind, which, as we all know, is a novel about the Civil War. She has a copyright, or now owned by her estate, in Gone with the Wind. It doesn't preclude somebody from writing a book about the Civil War, but it does preclude them from, writing sort of a substantially similar story using the character names. And, a modern day example is Tom Clancy in The Hunt for Red October.
Hmm.
Tom Clancy couldn't get The Hunt for Red October published, and he ended up, if you got a copy, you'll see it's copyrighted by, I think, the Naval Institute Press in Annapolis, Maryland. And then when it
Really?
did very well, Tom Clancy wanted to write sequels. And the Naval Institute Press's copyright, which Tom Clancy gave them as part of his
Yeah.
negotiations, caused
Yeah.
some problems and they had to work out a deal.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. I've got one last question for you, Stan. And then we're going to wrap this up. So, what is online enforcement and how does it apply to me as a seller? And I feel like we've just spent this whole podcast almost answering that question, but succinctly, what is it?
Now, you've got these various rights, and to make use of them, you have to enforce them. And in the online, for a seller, you have to enforce them in the online world. And you do have options. A lot of people will say you don't have any options because who are you going to sue? The sellers are based in China, or you don't know who the sellers are because they're using assumed names. Amazon does such a great job of vetting its own sellers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe they invite those unvetted people
All
with
right.
open arms.
And so, what are you going to do? Well, we're able to assert rights for other sellers and take down the infringing or knockoff products. And we're starting to go into the marketplace to deal with sort of false advertising and unfair competition claims.
Mhm.
Okay, where
Got
you've
it.
got sellers that are sort of outright lying about attributes of the products they're selling, but to a consumer, they think something that is advertised at a certain brightness or whatever that's significantly more than what's available in the market, but they don't know that. They think the higher the number, the better.
Mhm.
Right? So we're able to, uh, sort of bring the brick and mortar rules of retail to the online marketplace for sellers.
Okay. I have one last question because I'm in the industry of removing negative reviews. One of the things I fairly regularly see are completely false claims about a product. So, what happens to the scenario is typically that some competitor, we don't know who, wants to review bomb their competitor, right? So, they've gotten very good at this. And they leave these reviews that make wild and completely false claims. Would I technically have some legal recourse on that if I've got, well, actually, multi-pronged question. Do I need to have a trademark and or patent or uh you know any of the three protections that we've been talking about in order to have a lawyer send a letter to Amazon saying, "Hey, this review is product defamation, it's false claims. You need to remove it."
The short answer is no. I don't know how helpful Amazon will be in taking down, bad reviews, but
I mean, I can
yeah,
answer that, but go on,
yeah, yeah.
please.
But potentially you've got a claim against the people who have posted the reviews. Right?
Mhm.
And for defamation, also for unfair competition. I mean, one of the situations where we successfully asserted an unfair competition claim for a client was they were selling a product that had 15,000 reviews, and somebody had managed to create an unauthorized variant. The public went to the client's product right in the middle of the page, and
Mhm.
where it was set up. So like if you're buying a t-shirt, you've got small, medium, large. It had sort of a similar product, but a different product at half
Mhm.
the price. And
Mhm.
yet it benefited from all of the client's 15,000 reviews, even though it had no reviews of its own.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
and
Yep.
Amazon, the client came to us because Amazon wouldn't do anything about it. Amazon
That's
wa
uncommon.
this is how Amazon's set up to work. The reviews populate to the variance, okay? And we were able to explain to a federal judge that it's unfair competition, that they're taking advantage of our clients' 15,000 reviews to benefit their product. And we got a court order directing Amazon to take down that product.
Interesting. This gives me ideas, Stan. Gives me ideas. I
We'll
could think
we'll
of a way
talk
that
offline.
let's do it. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. All right. Well, that is all the questions I have for you. I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast. This has actually been extremely valuable data. Um,
All
you
right.
know,
So
tell
before
me
we
where.
go,
Yeah.
let me give you a little bit of contact information, if I may.
Yes,
We've got
please. I was about to ask.
we've got a practice area website that is talks about what we do here, and it's got some videos from from some clients. It's
Hmm.
easy to remember, onlinecounterfeiting.com.
All
Right?
right.
And if your listeners go to onlinecounterfeiting.com/ecom growth, we'll have a little white paper that they can download.
Sweet.
Okay.
Thank you for putting that together.
And if anybody needs to reach out to me, you can reach me at sdference, F-E-R-E-N-C-E, at ferencelaw.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Stan. Good to have you on.
Well, thanks for
I
having
appreciate
me.
it. Absolutely. All right. Stick around. I'm going to talk to you offline.
Okay.
All right.